Prepositions in French are those small words which make a big difference to how well you are understood when speaking French. It can be really difficult to know when to use which one, but in today's video I'm going to give you a really cool trick to decide how and when to use pour in your French sentences. So let's get started. One single French preposition can translate to multiple English prepositions depending on its context and depending on which verb you use and depending on the meaning you need to convey, and it can be really difficult to know which one to choose when. For example, pour can translate in English to both for and to, and for a long time I didn't know how to correctly use it, and it really affected my confidence when speaking. It would increase the amount that I hesitated during conversations. That is until I found this one cool trick to know when to use it to mean to, and that's what we're focusing on in today's video. I'm not going to beat around the bush, I'm not going to waste your time. If in the English sentence you want to translate to French, you can use the term in order to, then that is one very common case of where you can use pour. Pour will translate to in order to 100% of the time. So, if you can use in order to in your English sentence, then you use pour. Easy, huh? No exception to that whatsoever. Now for a bit more of a discussion and explanation. We can find that everyday informal French of today is a bit like formal or more posh English. Let's translate a few example French sentences word for word, roughly, into English, and let's see how they sound to us. J'ai tout ce dont j'ai besoin. J'ai tout ce dont j'ai besoin would translate roughly to I have everything of which I am in need. I have everything of which I am in need. Then there's Je me crois au paradis. Je me crois au paradis. I believe myself to be in paradise. I believe myself to be in paradise. And thirdly, l'enterrement de la vie de garçon. L'enterrement de la vie de garçon. This is the translation for a stag do or a bachelor party, and they say the burial of the life of the boy. The burial of the life of the boy. What a mouthful. This sort of construction often makes building sentences in French for English speakers a real difficulty because they're built in a more complex fashion that we don't necessarily use anymore. However, thinking about building a sentence like this can actually help us when it comes to figuring out how and when to use pour, specifically when pour can go just before the infinitive of a verb. It turns out somewhere along the way, somewhere along the evolution of English, we have decided to cut down in order to just to. And this makes it harder for us to know whether to use for or to when translating pour. Think to yourself now, just take a second to think how often you say in order to. I find it's far less than when we just say simply to. We don't even think about it, it's so common. It might not help you to just say that pour equals to, because to can be translated to different prepositions in French, and there's no way to really easily discern one from the other. Let's look at a few examples. L'ordinateur me permet de travailler à distance. L'ordinateur me permet de travailler à distance. The computer allows me to work remotely. The computer allows me to work remotely. N'hésitez pas à me rappeler. N'hésitez pas à me rappeler. Don't hesitate to call me. Don't hesitate to call me. But what if I told you that pour before a verb always translates to in order to? Does that make it easier to know when to use pour or what? If you like to first build your sentence in English and then translate it to French, this tip can be invaluable to you like it was to me. Let's look at a couple of examples where we commonly use to but we actually mean in order to. And let's see if it helps you to recognise where to use pour. You need a passport to travel. You need a passport to travel. Or, you need a passport in order to travel. In order to travel. T'as besoin d'un passeport pour voyager. T'as besoin d'un passeport pour voyager. I meditate to be more efficient at work. I meditate to be more efficient at work. Or, I meditate in order to be more efficient at work. I meditate in order to be more efficient at work. Je fais de la méditation pour être plus efficace au travail. Je fais de la méditation pour être plus efficace au travail. And honestly, I could go on and list 100 more. Pour, it always equals in order to. It's fantastic. We don't always get these cases where it's 100% follows a rule. There's always an exception, but I guarantee you in this one, there is no exception. So if you remember just one thing from today's video, it is that pour equals in order to. I must have said it about 50 times in the last 2 minutes. So next time you're constructing a sentence that you want to change into French, just think about it. Does it include to? Can that to also make sense as in order to? Well then, what do you say in French? Yeah, I thought so. You know by now. And just before I let you go, there is another little formal way of saying pour, which means exactly the same thing, but would maybe more come up in formal conversations or in writing. You can say afin de, and that means exactly the same as pour, and it translates, of course, to in order to. When I was studying for the DELF B2 exam, I would mix it up so that I had more variety in my vernacular. So use this tip as much as you can, but before you know it, you'll be speaking French like President Macron himself. Although he probably says afin de, because you know he speaks more formally a lot of the time. Bon, c'est fini. Merci de regarder. Laissez vos meilleurs exemples des phrases qui contiennent pour comme traduction de in order to dans les commentaires ci-dessous. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please share it with anyone else who you might think would find it valuable. And of course, if you haven't yet subscribed, click on that big red subscribe button down below the video. It really helps the channel grow. Of course, if you have any new ideas for videos you'd like to see in the future, also leave them down in the comments. While you're waiting for the next one, why not click on the thumbnail at the end of this episode to check out one I made all about very common informal greetings in French. But until next time, à la prochaine. Ciao.